Have you ever finished a therapy session but carried your client's emotions with you? Have you ever also thought that if I say no to my client, he or she will feel hurt? Should I reply to my client right now, or should I wait for my mental health to be stable? Am I being supportive, or am I being too involved in my client? So, if you're also someone who struggled with blurred lines, guilt, emotional exhaustion after seeing a client, then this video is for you. Building boundaries, creating boundaries is not about caring less, but it is also about creating that safe space not only for your client but also for you. In this video, I will share 5 boundary principles every therapist need to protect their energy. And I will also share my little secret in the end. Hi everyone, I'm Dr.Aanchal. I'm founder of Trailblazer Academy, where I help psychologists, budding psychologists, students become confident, ethical, and client ready. Many new therapists, they tell about theories, they also tell about intervention, CBT, RBT, but they always forget to talk about this very basic thing, which is how can I prevent my energy to not to get invested or get exhausted. So this is the first formula I always tell my students: is how do you protect yourself while you're helping others? And that's exactly where boundaries come in. So let's dive in and understand the first point, which is the silent cost of weak boundaries. Many beginner therapists, they believe that good therapists should always be available. At what cost? They also believe that I should not disappoint my client. I agree to that. But at the same time, do you give extra time? Do you tend to get so much drained at the end of the day that you don't have any energy to work on yourself, on your exercise, or on your life? Because if we become over compassionate and over giving, we will notice that we are feeling empty, emotionally drained after every session. We are thinking constantly about our life, about the client's life, their problems, their worries. We start getting difficulties in disconnecting with our work, with ourselves after our work. We also feel responsible for whatever our client is facing, whatever their outcome is. We feel that we are responsible for good or bad. So, this is the silent cost of weak boundaries. A therapist without strong boundaries can become emotionally exhausted. So, remember, your boundaries protect your strength. But then always I will ask that, ma'am, how to create boundaries? What is this one thing? So let's understand the first point is how can I have clarity in the first session and I can give clarity to my clients as well. So healthy boundaries does not begin when the problem happens. In the first session only that we have to give a clear expectation to our client. So what will be the duration of the session, how the communication is going to happen inside the session and not beyond the session. Even if beyond the session the communication need to happen, how, what is the source, what is the medium? Shall it happen through message first, mail, or it should be a quick call or a quick heads up before calling? So confidentiality limit, that how and what are the things that you're going to not share, but very severe thing you're going to share. What is the limit of the confidentiality? And also emergency support procedures. All these things come under your boundaries. So many therapists, they generally feel very uncomfortable sharing all these things, but I will suggest is to consider and take all these things in your session immediately, because clarity is kindness. Because once you are not going to respond to them later outside the session, they will feel that you're rude. So it is better to have a clear ground rules in first session itself. You can maybe start with saying that before we begin, I want to explain how the session works, how we're going to exactly go about it, and there are certain rules. So professional clarity builds trust. That is the first rule. So moving on to second point, which is communicating boundaries effectively. Setting boundaries is not just what we are saying; it is also about how we say it. Are we being too flexible or we are being too rigid? So one common mistake I did it most of my experience is I was being too warm and I was being too very flexible. And I realized that the messaging even after my work hours is draining my energy. So instead of directly being too firm, it is a combination of warmth and firmness, which I lately realized and which I have learned after many years of doing wrong practice. So this is something which you should not do it in your practice. So healthy boundaries is a combination of warmth and firmness, right? So instead of saying that I can't reply you after hours, maybe we can say that I want to make sure that I give you 100% attention, proper care. So message will be discussed during the scheduled sessions. And even if you have something to ask after session, just drop a text. I will reply the next day. First thing I will do is to reply your text. So, notice the difference. The difference is how very effectively you're communicating, and boundaries remains and the relationship also stays. So a helpful formula will be validate, boundary, and an alternative. Okay, so example, I understand this feels important. I understand this is something you really need to focus upon. I'm unable to extend today's session, but let's note this is the first thing we explore next time. So maybe you are very ending it on a alternative and validating it, and at the same time having a strong boundary. Yeah. Moving on to the third principle, handling boundary violations with grace. What is handling boundary violations? Even if the boundary is violated by a client, how can we handle it with very graceful thing that really requires a lot of practice, right? So a client may message repeatedly, and it's a very common habit because we need to understand that they're going through something. But at the same time, how important it is, if it is a suicidal case, and this is where I need to let go of my boundaries. If it is something which need to be catered later, then I need to be gracefully handling it. So, if a message is getting repeatedly from a client and they require extra time for the next session, asking personal questions, or maybe asking something which is not really relevant, it depends heavily on us as a therapist, as a psychologist. If saying no does not really mean that I'm disrespecting the intention of a client. Sometimes it is also the pattern of a client that is coming up in a communications. Sometimes it is their fear, sometimes it is their something extra they are seeking in the therapeutic relationship. So instead of reacting, get curious and ask, what does this moment tell us about your needs? Show them the mirror of their patterns. So boundary moments can also become therapeutic moments. Isn't it great? So a client says, for example, that you never reply immediately. Maybe you don't care, and this is something which I have repeatedly heard from my clients, that you ignore me, that you don't care. So instead of being defensive, let's try and say that it sounds like a delayed responses. Bring up something dealing with of not being important. Is it something like that? Do you feel that you're not important? So let's understand what was the hidden emotion behind that. So did you realize that how we are converting this boundary into a therapeutic boundary? So that's therapy. Moving on to the next principle, which is when to say no and actually mean it. That's the toughest thing to do. But some people are very firm no's, which is a very hardest skill for therapists to say no, especially when we are naturally empathetic. I know most of us are. So remember, every yes has a cost. Saying yes to everything can mean saying no to your rest, to your mental well being, to your physical well being, to your personal life, to your effectiveness, to your work. So, a professional no can also be compassionate. How? For example, I won't be able to offer that right now, but here is what I can support you with. Maybe we can also say that is something which is outside my role, but let's discuss the other appropriate alternative resources. I remember I was going on for a walk, and some client asked me, I'm also going for a walk there. Can I join you? So I said, no, I am going with my friends, or I'm going with my relative. So that was a polite way of saying, or maybe, maybe there are other ways as well, but this is what that seemed to me the right answer at that moment. So saying no, it's not a rejection, and it is creating definitely a healthy boundaries. Yes. So moving on to the next principle, which is self-care as a boundary tool, and most of us forget doing this. It is a part of our ethical therapist. So because we are the most important uh, therapy tools. So self-care boundaries include taking break between sessions. Don't take two continuous sessions. Take breaks. Supervision and consultation. Then not overloading your schedules. There are days when I don't take more than 3 clients per day. Then there are days when I don't do clients at all, when I feel that I'm too overwhelmed, when I'm too struggling with myself, with my own thoughts and emotions. I take rests. It's important to take care of our own selves. Having own support system, having own spiritual anchor, and own emotional reflections after every sessions, that is really important. We have to hold space for others. At the same time, we have to create space for ourselves first, so that we can create and hold and space for them. Yeah. So now the time for revealing my secret. I'm also sharing the link here for cutting the cord energies. This is something which I do after every session. It's a 5-minute guided meditation. I apply it, and I also share it with my students to do it after every session, or you can also do it every night before sleeping, so that all the energies and exchange of energies and to protect our energy is done. Protecting and guiding your energies and cutting the energies is really important and a part of creating boundaries in our life. So, what did we learn in this entire video is clarity. The session in the first session itself, communicating boundaries effectively, handling boundary violations with a lot of grace, learning when to say no, and yes, protecting your energy through self care. So, just remember that great therapists are not available every second, every other time. Great therapists are intentional, they are present, they're emotionally grounded, and boundaries, own boundaries, does not reduce compassion. Yes, so they protect it. If you're a budding psychologist, and if you are really learning, if you're really building up your career, so just subscribe this channel, and I will be sharing a lot of tools and a lot of other activities in your journey to make your journey simpler and effective.